Gildan Media presents Your Coach in a Box, affordable life-changing audio programs.
Forget a mentor. Find a sponsor. The new way to fast-track your career. Sylvia Ann Hewlett. Introduction. My story. My understanding of the power of sponsorship is rooted in my childhood. I grew up in a family of 6 sisters in a small town in the Welsh mining valleys. In the 1960s, this corner of Britain was a bleak and barren place. Across the coalfield, the collieries were closing down. Unemployment hovered at 28%. As a girl child, there was not much you could look forward to. Maybe you could marry an unemployed miner. You could always do that. But my father, very much the working-class bloke, had plans for his daughters. When I was 13, he took me by bus to Cambridge to show me the dreaming spires of one of Europe's most beautiful and distinguished universities. After 2 days seeing the sights, King's College Chapel and Trinity's Renaissance Library stand out in my memory, and taking in a debate at the Cambridge Union, my dad was ready to deliver the message. Over a plate of beans and toast, we'd found a cheap greasy spoon we felt comfortable in. He stared me in the eye and told me straight, "If you work hard, you can go here." His voice was hard-edged with urgent passion. "I promise you, girl, Cambridge will change your life." I was memorized. My dad's advice was simple enough, but was it realistic? What chance did I have of getting in? I attended a third-rate state school that had never sent anyone to either Oxford or Cambridge. But it wasn't just my schooling. In a variety of ways, I was a long way from being standard Oxbridge material. Until this bus trip, I had never eaten in a restaurant or stayed in a hotel, and I lacked some of the most elementary social skills. I had no small talk and was clueless when it came to figuring out which fork to use when tackling peas or fish. To cap things off, I spoke English with a thick Welsh accent, the kiss of death in upper-crust British society. As it turned out, my father's challenge wasn't so unrealistic. My unsophisticated dad, quite unwittingly, had gotten it right. Times were a-changing, and I did have a shot at getting into Oxbridge. A women's liberation movement was getting off the ground, and Harold Wilson, the new Labour Prime Minister, was kicking off a campaign to force the ancient universities to open their doors much more widely to 2 types of students: females and kids from the wrong side of the tracks. I qualified on both scores. But I'm getting ahead of my story. After that trip to Cambridge, I returned to my mediocre Welsh school fired up and focused. I knew I had to ace both O and A levels and do very well in a barrage of highly specialized Oxford and Cambridge entrance examinations. The head teacher at my school washed her hands of the entrance exams, saying that the school could not offer preparation beyond A level. But as I sent away for sets of past papers and delved in on my own, I got an offer of unofficial help from Miss Gwen Jones, my A-level English teacher. She told me I had special potential and that I reminded her of her 16-year-old self. Perhaps she wanted to provide the kind of support she herself had failed to find as a young person. Whatever the reason, Miss Jones offered invaluable help, assigning me challenging essays and giving me detailed feedback during the critical months leading up to A-levels and the Oxbridge entrance examinations. As Miss Jones saw it, she was not providing Oxbridge prep. By her own admission, she knew very little about the specifics of the examinations. Rather, she was trying to turn me into a good writer. She felt that if I learned to write with clarity and style, it might compensate for not being well drilled in other ways. We kept our tutoring sessions under the radar, meeting during lunch break and after classes in a small space under the stairs, away from the hustle and bustle of the school. We would cram 2 chairs under the stairwell and work away on essay drafts. I was enormously grateful for her practical help, but even more grateful for her belief in me. That someone in authority thought I had academic potential bolstered my resolve enormously. Raw desire, a huge level of focus, and at least some hands-on help paid off. 4 years later, I won admission to Cambridge University. I remember the scene so clearly. The telegram came on January 25th, my birthday. My mom was feeling poorly. baby number 6, born when she was 45 years old, had left her exhausted and depleted. And that Saturday morning she'd asked me to do a little cleanup in our front garden, a rather grand word for the coal-dusted square of weeds that separated our semi-detached house from the road. So I was tugging away at some soot-covered dandelions when the postman walked through the front gate holding a telltale manila envelope. My heart leaped into my mouth. I knew the drill because I had already been turned down by Oxford. Rejections came by regular post. Why waste money on students you're turning down? Acceptances came by telegram. Hands trembling, I grabbed the envelope, ripped it open, and read the magic words. Offering place at Girton College, Cambridge University. Full scholarship. Letter following. Congratulations. I let out a piercing shriek, grabbed the amazed postman by the hand, and did a kind of furious stomping dance on the patch of dirt I'd just been digging. Hearing the ruckus, 3 of my sisters ran out of the house. It took them a moment to figure out what was happening, but a grubby fist waving a manila telegram told the story, and they joined in with gusto. I don't remember a happier day. I knew Cambridge would transform my life chances. But how exactly did I get into one of the best universities in Europe? Even at the time, I realized that I didn't do this on my own. Sure, I took some of the credit. I had, after all, done an enormous amount of work, but I owed much to others. My dad was first on my list. Miss Gwen Jones was second. But I also was dimly aware of the contributions of Sally Alexander, a student activist who led the fight for equal access to education for British women, and Barbara Castle, a minister in the Labour government who was spearheading new legislation on equal pay and equal opportunity. I didn't quite appreciate it at the time, but without these larger shifts in social attitudes and political priorities, I would not have gotten in. Oxbridge admissions committees were newly in the business of leaning over backward to see potential in candidates like me. My years at Cambridge were almost as magical as my father promised. Despite some tough stuff on the social front, my accent and general lack of polish made it extremely difficult to fit into the upper-class student scene. By the middle of my first year, I was under the wing of a remarkable woman who loved my spunk and determination and went to bat on my behalf. Dr. Jean Grove was a high-profile academic economist and my supervisor at Girton. Her support was transformative. A mere 6 months into my time at Cambridge, she chose me as her research assistant and invited me to accompany her on a summer research trip to Africa. She not only invited me to go, she made sure I could afford to take her up on the offer. My family was not in a position to bankroll a trip to Africa. That spring, she sat down with me and painstakingly helped me apply for a foundation grant, and then wrote the pivotal recommendation that ensured I got it. Ghana was an extraordinary experience. We spent 6 weeks working with the Ewe tribe in the Volta Delta, collecting agricultural data, crop yields, planting cycles, and so on. By the end of the summer, we'd accumulated enough evidence to demonstrate that the Ewe had developed a sustainable and highly productive type of intensive agriculture. They'd done this on their own using indigenous rather than imported methods and materials. It was a breakthrough finding. My research assistantship in Ghana had huge payoffs for me. It fueled a lifelong interest in economic development and led to a co-authored article with Jean Grove that lifted my confidence and greatly improved my prospects for graduate school. 2 years later, I won a spot at Harvard University and a Kennedy Scholarship. Post-Harvard and post-London University, where I earned my PhD, I landed a sought-after first job as assistant professor of economics at Barnard College, Columbia University, and began to forge what should have been a promising career in academe. I wish I could say it was smooth sailing. It was not. I made the classic female mistake. I thought that it was all about doing my job extraordinarily well. If I put my head down and worked as hard as I knew how, my value to the organization would be self-evident, and of course, I would be recognized and promoted. In retrospect, I could kick myself. Why didn't I understand that at these beginning stages of a serious and super competitive career, I needed a sponsor more than ever? Someone with power who believed in me and was prepared to propel and protect me as I set about climbing the ladder. Why didn't I get out there and look for a new Jean Grove? Don't get me wrong, I did acquire a ton of supporters. Like many women, I was good at friendships, and during my time at Barnard, I developed mentoring relationships with several close female colleagues. One was an older woman, an historian named Annette Baxter, whom I admired for her kindness and her commitment to principle. She was forever on the outs with her chairman because she disagreed with the direction in which he was taking the department. Annette gave me a great deal. I remember with particular gratitude the ways in which she boosted my confidence and soothed my soul when I felt overwhelmed by the demands of a new baby, layered as it was on top of the pressures of a high-octane job. But close as our relationship was, Annette could not be my sponsor. She had little clout at Barnard. Her feud with her department chair put her out of play. And her influence in my discipline, economics, was non-existent. My lack of sponsors had extremely serious consequences. Crunch time came 7 years later, when I was up for tenure. In the months leading up to the decision, I was increasingly confident. I had always been an outstanding teacher. My ratings were off the charts. But I felt newly confident on the research front. My recent book had garnered stellar reviews and the attention of policymakers as well as scholars. As I helped my chairman assemble my dossier, I thought that it looked pretty impressive. Imagine my shock when, 3 months later, I was denied tenure. My department supported me. I breezed by with a unanimous vote. The damage was done by the university-wide committee, the APT, Appointments, Promotion, and Tenure Committee of Columbia University, which shot me down in a 3-2 vote. It turns out I had no advocates at this critical final level. No one even knew me. According to a friend of a friend who knew something about the deliberations of the committee, the only thing about my 7-year track record that attracted the committee's attention was that I'd recently given birth to a premature baby. They feared this would dilute my focus. How did I deal with this massive setback? Not well. I had plowed 12 years of my life into this career of mine, and I felt bewildered, betrayed, and brutally cast out. I mourned the waste of time and energy, but more importantly, I mourned the loss of a beloved profession, one that I deeply valued and was exceptionally good at. Tenure decisions are up or out. You're either promoted to associate professor and given lifetime job security, or you're fired. The decision came down in April, and by mid-May, I was packing up my office. As I regrouped and attempted to figure out how to reinvent my professional life, one thing was sure. I'd learned my lesson on the sponsorship front. I now understood that climbing the ladder in any competitive field required heavy-duty support from a senior person with heft and influence. Finding such a person wasn't easy. I hadn't been in the business of cultivating such relationships. But after some soul-searching, I realized that I did have such a person in my back pocket. His name was Harvey Picker, and he was Dean of the School of International Affairs at Columbia University and former CEO of Picker Instruments. Picker wasn't particularly influential at Columbia. He didn't sit on any of the critical university-wide committees. But he did have power in the wider world, and most importantly, he was a great fan of mine. We'd met through my teaching. A Brazil enthusiast, Picker had sat in on some sessions of a course I taught on the Latin American economy, and we'd had spirited discussions on growth models and on trade-offs between economic growth and social justice in the Third World. We shared a Portuguese language instructor and a love of fado, Portuguese folk music. A week after the tenure debacle, I turned up in Harvey's office clear-eyed and focused. I came directly to the point. Could he help me find a job? Harvey came through. Indeed, he was not merely responsive. He got out in front. In his old-fashioned courtly way, he told me that he'd learned of what he called the ridiculous tenure decision, and was profoundly put out, so much so that he'd taken it upon himself to scope out a job that might suit me. The top slot at the Economic Policy Council, a New York-based nonprofit that brought together 100 corporate CEOs and trade union leaders to examine cutting-edge issues, was open, and Harvey thought that my skill set was perfect for the position. I had precisely the mix of top-notch academic credentials and international experience they were looking for. Did he have my permission to put my name forward? He knew the chairman of the EPC board rather well. And while that didn't count for much, Harvey was a self-deprecating sort of person. It would open the door, which was all I needed. Dumbstruck, I conjured up a weak and wobbly yes. A month later, I started a brand new career. So I finally got it. Sponsorship, that is. I did my utmost to never again let it go. My career journey was complicated. More on that in the final chapter. But from here on out, I knew that if I was going to amount to anything, I needed powerful sponsors. 1. What is sponsorship? Pat Fili-Krushel, chairman of NBC Universal News Group, has come a long, long way in the super competitive and testosterone-fueled world of network news and media. Though not a journalist, she is the first woman in the American television news industry to head up a network news division, reporting directly to CEO Steve Burke. She's been on Fortune magazine's 50 Most Powerful Women list since 1998, and she's been honored with a slew of other awards, including induction into the Museum of Television and Radio's She Made It collection. No one would ever guess, in the presence of this poised and powerful executive, that she began her career as a secretary at ABC Sports. I've been lucky, Pat insists when I marvel at her extraordinary journey. And I've worked my tail off. She pauses to reflect and adds, but one of the things I've done well, and I don't know that it's conscious, is that I've always made my boss look good. All the people I've worked for will tell you, I like having Pat around because I know she's got my back. One of those people was Bob Iger, now CEO of Disney, whom she met at the Xerox machine when both were starting out their careers at ABC Sports. While she didn't initially report to Iger, her work ethic and performance won his attention, and he pulled her onto his team. Whenever Iger moved up, he recommended that Fili-Krushel fill his vacancy. It was Iger who'd brought her over to ABC from Lifetime Television, where she'd served as a senior vice president of programming, and installed her as president of ABC Daytime Television. But Fili-Krushel was quick to make good on his investment in her. She was the driving force behind The View, the talk show that helped vault ABC's daytime programming to #1 among women 18 to 49 years old. She also conceived and launched SoapNet, a 24-hour soap opera cable network, which went on to become a multi-billion-dollar business. Do your job well. Make sure your boss is fully informed, and don't be afraid to ask for help, she explains. That's how you build the trust vital to any long-term professional relationship. Superior performance and trust is certainly what delivered Pat to her current position with Steve Burke. She'd impressed him back when they both worked for Disney. She as president of ABC TV, he as president of ABC Broadcasting. Pat was someone you could absolutely count on to do the right thing, Burke told me. She wasn't intimidated by projects or people, and she didn't play politics. I knew her motivations at all times, and that made her 100% trustworthy. So in 2011, after Comcast and GE merged with NBC and Burke found himself at the helm of a super siloed media monolith, it was Pat he turned to for help in transforming the culture. I knew if I got Pat, I wouldn't have to worry, he recalled. I knew when she found things wrong, she would make them right. I knew that if any of our top people had exposure to her, even without exposure to me, they'd know the kind of company we were trying to create. Hired on as executive vice president of NBC Universal, Pat immediately set to rights the compensation structure that had mired Burke's team in the past. With her formidable people skills, she helped affect the collaborative culture that Burke had envisioned. When Burke decided to form the news group, putting NBC News, CNBC, MSNBC, and the Weather Channel in the hands of one executive, it was again Pat who emerged as first choice. I knew my decision would ruffle some feathers, Burke confided. Pat's not a journalist, so how could she be put in charge of hundreds of journalists who are risking their lives all over the world? But she didn't need to be the senior-most journalist in order to find the people who could make this new environment productive and cooperative. But if initially people scratched their heads at Pat's appointment, they don't anymore. Everyone, from Brian Williams to staff members, has told me she's a breath of fresh air, Burke observed when we spoke in early 2013. Pat's a great executive, the kind who creates an environment where people enjoy what they do. She has my complete confidence. Marina, an assistant finance manager at Lloyd's Banking Group of London, feels pretty well supported at work. She received a warm welcome when she returned from maternity leave last year. She was given the part-time schedule she'd requested, an unusual accommodation for anyone in the risk assurance department, and was assigned to a line manager she both liked and knew would look out for her. While grateful for these developments, Marina wasn't terribly surprised. She believed that it was all about performance, and she'd consistently delivered over her 10 years at the bank. "It stands to reason," she told me, "that the higher-ups appreciate my track record. When you've worked for a company as long as I have, your results speak for themselves," she explained. "Once someone has seen your good work, it's hard for someone to say, 'Oh, she's rubbish, she's got to go,' because people won't believe it. People who know my skills and level of commitment will support me and make sure I'm rewarded." But it doesn't seem to be working out that way. Now that she's working a full-time schedule again, Marina is frustrated that those same people haven't done more to fast-track her career. One of them, a super-duper female executive she met through the women's network at the bank, struck her as someone who might be a champion. "She's absolutely my role model because she also has young children and knows a thing or two about how a woman can make it big in a male-dominated environment," Marina enthused. But their relationship has remained casual and remote. "I thought of asking her to sponsor me," said Marina wistfully, "but I had second thoughts. She's my boss's boss, and there might be some conflict of interest." For now, Marina is pinning her hopes on her longtime mentor, a senior person who has given her wise counsel over the years. He makes a point of complimenting her on her contributions, so she's fairly sure that he has sent some work her way. "No one has said that directly, but I have a feeling that's the case," Marina said. "He did say to me once, 'You're one of those people who's good at fixing things. You're Mrs. Fix-It.'" Marina told me that she thinks in time her mentor will come through. Having recognized her good work, he will eventually reward it. "I'm definitely on his radar," she says, citing a conversation where he seemed pleased to learn she was working on a mission-critical project. "I haven't gotten a promotion out of him yet, but I'm confident he sees my potential." Two ambitious women, two different career strategies. Top performers with a great deal of potential. Each attracted the attention of a superior position to help her navigate a particularly tricky curve in her career trajectory. But whereas Marina is still waiting for her promotion, Pat has ascended to the C-suite, the domain of CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and other chief executives. What accounts for these vastly different outcomes? Why do so many women like Marina stall out short of the leadership positions they have the potential to fill? Why do so few women like Pat fulfill their dreams and attain positions of true power and influence? After 2 years of exhaustive inquiry, I can tell you why. High-potential women have mentors but lack sponsors. They fail to cultivate strategic alliances with individuals capable of propelling them into leadership positions and protecting them from other contenders. Often, like Marina, they have would-be advocates, senior-level leaders who've taken note of their capabilities. But they don't know how to turbocharge these relationships. They don't understand the quid pro quo, the mutual investment that ensures both parties remain incentivized to help each other over the long run. So, like Marina, they put their heads down, work harder, and wait, hoping that their mentors and role models will see to their success. This mistake is all too common, and one that women and professionals of color are particularly prone to making. I myself have made it, but as my own career path demonstrates, it's never too late to seize hold of your dreams, win sponsors, and pull yourself out of a career stall. If you're on a slow road to nowhere, consider changing your strategy. Forget a mentor. Find a sponsor. Mentorship versus sponsorship. Don't get me wrong, mentors matter. You absolutely need them, but they're not your ticket to the top. Mentors give, whereas sponsors invest. Let me clarify. Mentors are those people who take an interest in counseling you because they like you or because you remind them of themselves. Mentors will listen sympathetically to just about anything you care to bring up. Indeed, the whole idea of having a mentor is to discuss what you cannot or dare not bring up with your boss or colleagues. Your mentor will listen to your issues, offer advice, and review which problem-solving approaches to take and which to discard. Mentors give generously of their time. In return, you listen and try to heed their advice. It may be that they enjoy drawing on their experience and sharing their wisdom, or they're paying back their own early supporters, or they're paying the debt forward. In any case, it's an asymmetric relationship. The energy is flowing one way, toward you. A sponsor, as we shall explore, is also someone who takes an interest in you and your career, but not out of altruism or like-mindedness. A sponsor sees furthering your career as an important investment in his or her own career, organization, or vision. Sponsors may advise or steer you, but their chief role is to develop you as a leader. Your role is to earn their investment in you. Indeed, throughout the relationship, you're delivering outstanding results, building their brand or legacy, and generally making them look good. You're driving the relationship, making sure that whatever dividends you realize in the way of promotions, pay raises, or plum assignments are manifestly dividends that you earned. Sponsorship done right is transactional. It's an implicit or even explicit strategic alliance, a long-range quid pro quo. But provided you're giving as good as you're getting, there's nothing about this dynamic that warrants distaste. Sponsorship isn't favoritism or politics. It doesn't rig the game. On the contrary, it ensures you get what you've worked for and deserve. Sponsorship versus mentor. Sponsor. Senior person who believes in your potential and is willing to take a bet on you. Advocates for your next promotion. Encourages you to take risks and has your back. Expects a great deal from you, stellar performance and loyalty. Mentor. Experienced person willing to help and support you. Builds your confidence and provides a sounding board. Offers empathy and a shoulder to cry on. Expects very little in return. Sponsor/mentor. Advice, guidance, makes introductions, gives feedback. Sponsors can be role models, leaders you relate to and aspire to emulate, but they needn't be and often aren't. What's important in sponsorship is trust, not affinity. It'd be nice if the person who can most help you turns out to be a person you like or most want to be like. But trust can arise between two people who are vastly different. This difference imbues sponsorship with power because each party gains from the complementarity of the other. The alliance is then greater than the sum of its individual parts. This is not to belittle the role that supporters, by which I mean both mentors and role models, play in your career. Role models serve as vital inspiration, boosting your drive and giving form to your ambition. Mentors, who are often role models, can offer empathetic support, help you figure out what you want, and determine with you what steps will get you there. A good mentor will decode the unwritten rules, demystify the way things work, and offer you tips on navigating the organization. People who are mentored feel less isolated, especially if they're entrepreneurs, more connected to their company, and less stressed than those who lack such attention and guidance. Multicultural professionals in particular benefit from the emotional support and pledge of solidarity that mentors and role models of color provide. But neither mentors nor role models can give you real career traction. Research we conducted at the Center for Talent Innovation, CTI, shows that sponsors, not mentors, put you on the path to power and influence by affecting three things: pay raises, high-profile assignments, and promotions. When it comes to asking for a pay raise, our research finds the majority of men, 67%, and women, 70%, resist confronting their boss. With a sponsor in their corner, however, nearly half of men and 38% of women will make the request. And our focus group research suggests will succeed in getting the raise. When it comes to getting assigned to a high-visibility team or plum project, some 43% of male employees and 36% of females will approach their manager and make the request. With a sponsor, the numbers rise to 56% and 44% respectively. Our research also shows that the individuals who are most satisfied with their rate of advancement are individuals with sponsors. Fully 70% of sponsored men and 68% of sponsored women feel they are progressing through the ranks at a satisfactory pace, compared to 57% of their unsponsored peers. That translates into a sponsor effect of 23% for men and 19% for women. CTI research shows that sponsors affect women's career trajectory even more profoundly than men's in at least one respect. 85% of mothers employed full-time who have sponsors stay in the game, compared to only 58% of those going it alone. That's a sponsor effect of 27%. The sponsor effect on professionals of color is even more impressive. Minority employees are 65% more likely than their unsponsored cohorts to be satisfied with their rate of advancement. Even in companies with robust mentoring programs, mentoring doesn't deliver on its promise, or at least not for women and people of color. Research conducted by Catalyst, an advocacy organization for women in business, shows that while more women than men have been mentored, more men have won promotions, 15% more, according to a 2008 study. Mentors are no silver bullet, no matter how heavily Fortune 500 corporations invest in mentorship programs. So if, like Marina, you're waiting for your role model or mentor to part the waters and set you up on the distant shore, you're wasting precious time. I wrote this book to make sure you don't make Marina's mistake, to show you why you need sponsors, and you need more than one, to help you achieve your vision, whether that's a leading role in a large company, a strategic role in a small company, founding a business of your own, or steering a nonprofit or educational organization to fulfill its mission and mandate. I created the roadmap you'll find in Part 2 to show you exactly what you need to do to attract sponsors, win their advocacy, sustain their interest, and leverage their backing throughout your career. Because even at the pinnacle of your career, you'll find that these skills serve you. Fabulously successful entrepreneurs and CEOs alike still need powerful voices to get them onto boards, introduce them to investors, or secure them a spot at the World Economic Forum at Davos. Sponsorship is the mechanism by which people of vision attain their goals, which is why no one, male or female, millennial or boomer, startup employee or multinational manager, can afford to dismiss it or miss out on it. That being said, women and people of color stand to benefit the most from this book precisely because sponsorship has long been the inside track for Caucasian men. Men are 46% more likely than women, and Caucasians are 63% more likely than professionals of color to have a sponsor seeing to their success. I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy here. Rather, it's a quirk of human nature that keeps leadership in the United States and Europe mostly pale and male. Those in power tend to invest in other members of their tribe because they're the ones they trust most readily. This is the way it has worked since the dawn of civilization. But that doesn't mean sponsorship is the exclusive province of straight white guys. That sponsorship has worked so well for the Old Boys Network for so long simply underscores the power of this type of advocacy, not the exclusivity of power. As the founder of an organization focused on talent issues, I have the privilege of knowing white male executives who are committing every resource at their disposal to changing the face of leadership, and not because women's groups have pressured them into it. They understand that much of the best talent out there is diverse. Our research shows that Caucasian men comprise a mere 17% of college graduates around the world. There's never been a better time, that is, for accomplished, ambitious women and people of color to show they're eager to move into leadership roles, because the business sector is competing for them worldwide. For them, sponsorship is the key that turns all the tumblers, unlocking the door to the C-suite on Main Street as well as Wall Street. The research undergirding the advice in this book draws on the collective experience and wisdom of some 10,000 full-time workers in the private sector. We interviewed dozens of Fortune 500 leaders, convened with over 100 managers on insight and online focus groups, and surveyed thousands of employees in the United States and the United Kingdom. People on every rung of the ladder in every profession that requires a college degree. While most of these people work for large corporations, the insights derived from their experience transcend environment. Cultivating a sponsor and leveraging the relationship to mutual benefit turns out to be a skill that serves people in nonprofits and education as readily as it serves people in for-profits and government. Finally, I've tested this research on the ground. I presented this roadmap to hundreds of professionals worldwide, to graduate students at Skolkovo School of Management in Moscow, to bankers in London City, even to the National Football League in Midtown Manhattan. The response has been amazing. You can feel the aha moment happen. Men and women see in sponsorship the game changer they've been looking for. But they see something more. With this roadmap in hand, they're in a position to do the changing. They don't need to wait. They don't need to be tapped or chosen or singled out by someone else. It's up to them to put this dynamic into play. And now, it's up to you. 2. How sponsorship works. In 1983, barely 2 years out of business school, Brady Dugan accepted what many would have considered a mission impossible, relocating to Japan to take over the derivatives business in the regional office, grow its staff, and set a strategic course to build the firm's Pacific Rim presence in that business. Having only joined the derivatives group of Bankers Trust in 1982, Dugan had little business experience and no background in the region. Nor did he speak Japanese. He was all of 24 years old. Today, Dugan is CEO of the financial powerhouse Credit Suisse. He looks back on his first breakthrough assignment with wonder, marveling at the extraordinary opportunity he was given, and amazed that his boss placed such trust and faith in him to deliver. "I did have strong feel for my role and my duties," he says, "and I enjoyed the challenge of doing new things. But to ask me to take charge in Japan and grow the derivatives business for the entire Pacific Rim on my own, I was a very young manager to be doing that." Dugan credits his ascent to his boss, to whom he reported for nearly 20 years. Not because he made it easy for Dugan, but because he made it hard. "I became the person he gave the toughest assignments to, the things that needed fixing," Dugan observes. "He piled on the responsibilities. But because he believed in me, because he was clearly betting on me and giving me a leg up, I felt I owed him a lot and should do whatever he asked and come through with whatever he needed. That Japan posting proved to be an incredible opportunity. This sponsor of mine not only believed I was going to be successful, he then did everything he could to help me succeed." For example, Dugan's boss lent unvarnished feedback and wise counsel as needed, and helped Dugan figure out how to meet targets and fit his operation into the larger context of the business. When Dugan stumbled, his boss came to his defense. He'd say to senior management, "Okay, this didn't go perfectly, but Brady's overall record is very strong," Dugan explains. "He was always ready to run interference, manage the internal politics for me. That gave me the breathing room to take risks, and in this industry, you have to take a risk. Because only by doing so do others learn to believe in your ultimate potential." What a sponsor does. Dugan's extraordinary career ascent attests to the power of sponsorship. Indeed, he is so sure of its value that he spearheaded a successful initiative at Credit Suisse that turbocharges the careers of high-potential women. As Dugan knows full well, sponsorship can help catapult a top performer into senior management, as well as expand the reach and impact of senior leadership. It's the secret sauce, the missing link, the invisible dynamic that accounts for who is and who isn't in power. Whether that person is steering a Fortune 500 company or an internet startup. Whether that person founds a nonprofit or chairs an academic committee. Everyone who has realized an amazing vision or exerts remarkable influence can and will point to a series of sponsors, powerful individuals who helped pull them up or fund their ventures or clear a path forward. There are no exceptions. Sponsors do 3 things that mentors do not. Dugan's sponsor, for instance, went out on a limb for his protege, installing him at the helm of his pet project. Having plunged his protege into uncharted waters, he provided just enough support to keep Dugan afloat, both in Japan and within the firm, talking up his talent whenever others were eager to disparage it. Most importantly, he provided him air cover, acting as a shield so that Dugan could take the risks the assignment demanded. Having chosen to invest in this particular young man, this sponsor understood he needed to do everything within his power to ensure that Dugan and the Pacific Rim Project proved to be a resounding success. CTI research, begun in 2010, affirms the centrality of these 3 functions. In addition, we also learned that a sponsor does at least two of the following. He or she will expand your perception of what you can do, connect you to other senior leaders, boost your visibility in the company, provide you with stretch opportunities, advise you on your presentation of self, connect you to clients or customers, and give you honest, critical feedback on where you need to improve your game. What is a sponsor? Delivers high-octane advocacy. A sponsor is a senior leader who, at minimum, believes in me and goes out on a limb on my behalf, advocates for my next promotion, provides air cover so I can take risks, and comes through on at least two of the following fronts. Expands my perception of what I can do, makes connections to senior leaders, promotes my visibility, provides stretch opportunities, gives advice on presentation of self, makes connections to clients, customers, gives honest, critical feedback on skill gaps. If you're not in a corporate setting, it may help to think of a sponsor as a talent scout. He'll get you in front of directors to audition for a key role. He'll also nudge the director to choose you. But his investment in you doesn't stop there. He'll coach you on your performance so that you prove to others what an excellent choice he made. He'll focus a spotlight on you so that other directors take note of your abilities. And he'll make introductions afterward so that you can follow up with them to bring your talent to a wider audience. Should you stumble, or should any of those other directors turn hostile, your sponsor will come to your aid, because now that your brands are linked, it's in his best interests to ensure you succeed. Of course, sponsors also provide advice, which is why they're confused with mentors. From CTI's survey research, it's clear that protégés expect advice from their sponsors. Fully 74% of respondents told us they look to a sponsor to provide unvarnished feedback. But it's important to distinguish the critical feedback that sponsors deliver from the kindly advice mentors might dispense when asked. When a sponsor discusses your strengths and weaknesses, it's with an eye to steering you along a certain trajectory, one that will provide strategic gain for both of you. To that end, sponsors will not hesitate to point out painful shortcomings, skill gaps, communication failures, appearance blunders. They'll also tell you where and how to acquire critical line experience, build key networks, and project executive presence, which comprises looking and acting the part of a leader in terms of appearance, presentation skills, and gravitas. More on this in Chapter 12. This kind of strategic feedback can be awfully hard to hear. Yet because of sponsors who articulate the unspoken and point out the unremarked, women and people of color get to crack the code of an organization, overcoming hidden biases to lever themselves into contention for the top slots. One African American banking executive told me how he's come to feel a blood tie with his sponsor, precisely because she's asked him to take some difficult, even painful steps to improve himself. "A sponsor will smack you harder to shape up," he observed, "but will protect you as you move to the next level. She'll tell you the sort of things you'd never know were said about you in a meeting and would otherwise never know to correct. And if she's really got your back, she'll tell you how to correct them." A sponsor's protection goes beyond delivering tough love, our interviewees affirmed. One tax attorney described how he supported his protégé all the way to partnership, having hired her in the first place. He was confident of her ability to deliver, and when long-term clients demurred at liaising primarily with a junior person, this attorney vouched for her expertise. When she became the target of unfair criticism by another partner, he intervened, extorting from that partner an apology and a promise to look at the evidence and be less judgmental. In subtle and overt ways, he ensured that she was able to thrive, which indeed she did, making partner in 4 years. Unlike mentors, that is, sponsors will go the extra mile, taking you aside to tell you what you absolutely need to know, taking detractors aside so they don't impede your progress, and clearing a path forward should you encounter obstacles. Sponsors make it their business to see you succeed because you carry their brand. You are an extension of them, a carrier of their torch, the putative implementer of their vision. It behooves them to do everything in their power, once they believe in you and they've chosen you, to keep you on track. Only by seeing you to the finish line can they protect their own reputation. Carrie Perrano, now a senior vice president at American Express heading up international human resources and global employee relations, describes how her supervisor kept her on track for management at a juncture in her career when other women in her position might have been derailed for good. Some years earlier, just after she'd given birth to her second child, Perrano asked for a 3-day-a-week schedule. She was a mid-level manager and felt confident she could perform her duties in a compressed work week, but also recognized her superiors might not see it that way. "That's when my sponsor went to bat for me," Perrano relates. "She knew I was fully committed, not just to my team but to the firm, and she was determined to give me whatever support or air cover I needed to keep me on track." Perrano's request was granted, and after 3 years of working part-time, she was made a vice president. A testament not only to her hard work, but also to her sponsor's committed support and advocacy. "I look back on that phase and think how my career might have played out differently were it not for her sponsorship," Perrano muses. "I really don't think I'd be where I am today. I might even have left the firm. Since she placed such trust in me and went out on a limb to offer a flexible work arrangement, I was determined to be a credit to her." During economic downturns or industry upheavals, a sponsor can be the voice in the room that ensures you keep your job. One executive I interviewed recalled a watershed moment when her sponsor flew into London from New York to secure her a promotion she was in danger of losing to an outsider. "Marcia marched into the chairman's office, put her badge on the table, and said that it was completely transparent what was happening, and that if I didn't get the job, we were both leaving," she related. "Her strong-arm tactics worked because she was tremendously valued. They decided to go ahead and appoint me." When your job is on the line, your sponsor can at least ensure you don't damage your career over the long term. Darren, a director in the advisory practice of a large accounting firm, told me how he went to bat for a protege about to be fired because he'd been part of a group that had engaged in less than ethical practices in the run-up to the global financial crisis. "I did not just buckle over and go with the groupthink about the treatment this guy should get," Darren recalls. "I felt he was being unfairly tarnished, and I let my feelings be known to my peers as well as the people he reported to." When that didn't work, he was outnumbered and outvoted. He counseled his protege to take control of his destiny and quit so that he could leverage his track record without the stain of job termination. Darren made introductions and spoke favorably on his protege's behalf, an effort that culminated in a job offer at another Big Four accounting firm where the executive could distance himself from the events of 2008. "I may not have saved his job, but I believe I did save his career," says Darren. What a protege does. Maria, a managing director at a financial services firm with 900 technology professionals reporting to her, has always been a hard worker and a strong performer. Even employees whose jobs she's eliminated speak highly of her. She's come a long way from Dominica, where she was born, and Washington Heights, where she grew up. Still, as a dark-complexioned Latina leading overwhelmingly white male teams, she recognizes that being a subject matter expert and a star producer don't, in and of themselves, account for her leadership position. "I've always had the backing of my superiors," she says, "because I've always made sure they succeeded at whatever they were doing." Her first sponsor was a colleague who became her boss. He'd signed up to lead an integration project for the chief investment officer, and she signed up to help him. It proved to be a highly stressful cross-functional project that eliminated a number of jobs and tested the skills of her sponsor, as well as her own. Maria didn't let him down, bringing the project to a successful close in 10 months. But what endeared her to the CIO, in addition to her remarkable client service skills, was her unflagging commitment to him. "I was his right-hand person," she says. "I made sure that he was not surprised by anything. The thing about tech, systems are always breaking down, and I was there for him. When things were going poorly, I was the person saying, 'Have you thought about this?'" At one point, the company experienced a major data center failure the day before Maria was to fly to California to receive a prestigious award from a Hispanic science and technology group. "It was a great honor. I was all packed and ready to go," she recalls. But an hour before departure, she got a call from her sponsor. There was a crisis at work. so she canceled her plans and stayed to help. Afterward, he told her, "I will always remember this. Thank you for always being there for me." And remember, he did. When Maria was struggling to pull out of a career stall, he worked with her to devise a way forward, ultimately helping her land a coveted managing director position. His intervention marked a real turning point. If you have a history of delivering, being there, being committed, and making sure your boss is successful, he or she will be there to pick you up, says Maria. No one's going to do that for someone who has let them down. What protégés do, in a word, is deliver. As Maria intuited early in her career, they come through with both stellar performance and die-hard loyalty. They also deliver a distinct personal brand or unique skill set, a critical finding of the research. Star performers are very likely to attract sponsors, and loyal performers are very likely to keep them. But if they fail to distinguish themselves, these loyal performers run the risk of becoming permanent seconds, lieutenants who never make captain. To position themselves for the top job, protégés must therefore contribute something the leader prizes but may intrinsically lack. Gender smarts or cultural fluency on a team that lacks diversity. Quantitative skills or technical savvy on a team that is deficient in hard expertise. People skills on a team that's bristling with eggheads and nerds. You could provide unique insight into a target market. You could have access to a sought-after circle of investors or stakeholders. Whatever you bring, it must burnish the sponsor's personal brand across the organization, even as it distinguishes you from the crowd, delivering you your dream job and not one as second in command. Maria, for example, distinguished herself on the integration project by using her built-in proclivity, born of her culture and her heritage, to treat everyone on the team as if they were family. "I'm Latin, and I'm very family-oriented," she explains. "When I'm in charge, I want to know, how's your baby doing? Are you getting enough sleep? That's one of the things people love about being in my group. I make sure it's warm, supportive, and open." It's one of the things about her that secured the support of her first sponsor. "He told me never to change, no matter how rigid the manager I reported to." And intrigues her current sponsor. "You're very effective," he told her. "You have some people skills that I need to lean on and learn from." This isn't to diminish the performance piece of this equation. Delivering a superior product on time, winning a key piece of business, innovating a solution, and otherwise driving results with bottom-line impact are what will attract the attention of a sponsor in the first place. A third of U.S. managers and nearly half of U.K. managers want to sponsor a producer, a go-getter who hits deadlines. "I don't think for a second that my sponsor would promote me if I didn't deliver superior results," the head of audit at Lloyd's observes. "I don't feel that I can rest on my laurels just because I have her sponsorship." A partner in Ernst & Young's London advisory group stressed, in an interview, his key considerations when deciding whom to back. "It's simple," he said. "Hard work and drive. Are they the kind of person who has a work ethic similar to mine?" he asks himself, and will they go the extra mile? Debbie Story, chief of diversity at AT&T, agrees. "It's all about understanding the company's goals and direction, then making things happen. It's about continuously innovating and leading change," she says. "They have to demonstrate by how they lead that they can consistently drive teams to achieve results." While performance and value added will make you indispensable to your sponsors, it is loyalty that will bind them to you and make them care about your success. 37% of male managers and 36% of female managers say that being a loyal protégé matters, more than being collaborative or visionary or even highly productive. If delivering a standout performance is what wins you the attention of the powerful, demonstrating loyalty is what guarantees a powerful leader will commit to sponsoring you over the long haul. What is a protégé? Delivers high-octane support. A protégé is a high-potential employee who, at minimum, outperforms, contributes 110%, is loyal to me and the organization, contributes a distinct personal brand, and comes through on at least two of the following fronts: is trustworthy and discreet, covers my back, promotes my legacy, brings value-added, different perspective skill sets, leads with a yes, burnishes my brand across the organization, builds my A-team. As many of the executives in our survey pointed out, loyalty means looking out for your sponsor as protectively as your sponsor looks out for you. Protégés can provide insights about what's happening lower down in the organization because when you're at a senior level, you're less likely to get those honest messages about what people think of you and your strategy, says Lloyd's head of audit, who acts as her sponsor's eyes and ears and exhorts her protégés to do the same for her. Ed Gadsden, former chief diversity officer at Pfizer, remembers asking his sponsor, the legal scholar and federal judge Leon Higginbottom, why he took such an interest in him, aside from the fact that they were both African American. "You're nothing like me, Ed," Higginbottom told him. "The people you're around, the things you see, what you're hearing, you provide a perspective I wouldn't otherwise have." Now, as a sponsor himself, Gadsden has come to appreciate the perspective his own protégés provide. "They make sure I'm never blindsided," he says. Just as your sponsor is someone who supports you when you're not in the room, so too must you protect him or her from employee gossip, from harsh outsider opinion, even from collegial criticism. "Who do you want in your bunker?" an African-American executive at Johnson & Johnson asked me in an interview. "A loyal comrade in arms who, if you turn your back, guns for you, not at you." The two-way street. What should be clear at this point is how extraordinarily reciprocal sponsorship is. Protégés attract sponsors by delivering in exceptional ways and secure sponsorship by remaining utterly devoted, even as they distinguish themselves as stars in their own right. In return, sponsors invest in their protégés, not because they're impelled to pay it forward, but because they recognize the incredible benefit to their own careers of building a loyal cadre of outstanding performers who can extend their reach, build their legacy, and burnish their reputation. Over time, both parties win. Indeed, the win-win aspect of sponsorship is what accounts for its extraordinary leverage and durability. The two-way street. What a sponsor does. Goes out on a limb on my behalf. Advocates for my next promotion. Provides air cover. What a protégé does. Delivers in exceptional ways. Is trustworthy, loyal, and can be counted on. Brings a distinct personal brand and grows my scope and span. Contrast this to the decidedly one-way street of mentorship. Mentors give. They devote time, impart wisdom, and act as a sounding board or a shoulder to cry on. But mentees merely receive. They have no particular responsibilities other than to show up and listen. Mentors take an interest in the mentee's career, but not a stake in it, as they're not going to be held accountable for outcomes. Mentorship is at heart an expenditure rather than an investment, a gift rather than an alliance. It's doomed to peter out. The mentee outgrows the mentor's range of experience. The mentor moves on to needier novitiates. What this means is that the nature of your support relationships is up to you. You'll get back what you put in. If you're a high potential or strong performer, you'll attract the interest of your superiors. But whether that interest translates into mentorship or sponsorship is a function of your investment. You might be tapped for development, but you're not going to be given a ride on the coattails of anyone who doesn't see you pulling your weight, and then some. Mentors may pick you, but you pick your sponsors by committing yourself to their best interests. Because make no mistake, sponsors, unlike mentors, really need you. They need your support and skills. They need you to build their bench strength and complement their expertise. They need you to help them realize their vision and secure their legacy. You advance their careers, surprising as that might seem. There's a protégé effect akin to the sponsor effect in terms of career traction for leaders. White male leaders with a posse of protégés are 11% more satisfied with their own rate of advancement than leaders who haven't invested in up-and-comers. Leaders of color who've developed young talent are overall 24% more satisfied with their career progress than those who haven't built that base of support. The two-way street in action. Rosalind Hudnall and Jane Shaw. The moment she joined the guests gathered for Intel chairwoman Jane Shaw's retirement dinner, Rosalind Hudnall knew she had arrived. Virtually all of them were board members. She was one of only 3 guests who weren't part of that inner circle. Yet with every executive she met, Hudnall felt tacit acknowledgement that she belonged. Clearly, Shaw's inclusion of her implied that. But it was what Shaw's invitation acknowledged, not just her 17 years of service to the company as a diversity officer, but the respect she had acquired for her contribution to Shaw's personal legacy, which was to advance women onto corporate boards worldwide. Their relationship had begun when Shaw, poised to make a speech on the role of quotas in boosting women's board participation, sought out Hudnall for advice. Given her experience as a diversity chief, what did she believe her, Shaw's, message should be? "We worked really well together, and I was honored to be asked to help her find her voice on this critical issue," Hudnall recalls. From then on, Hudnall acted as a vital sounding board for her sponsor, helping her vet high-visibility projects. "Jane relied on me because she trusted I knew the subject matter and what she could achieve," Hudnall observes. More critically, Hudnall began to connect Shaw with people who could provide the forums she sought. "One of the things Jane absolutely loved was the depth of my network, the genuine relationships I'd cultivated with people," she observed. "Every place I brought her to, she'd walk away thinking, wow, that wouldn't have happened without Roz. I mean, here was this incredibly influential woman, a leader of companies who was relatively unknown on the outside. I was proud to help change that." What surprised Hudnall about the invitation to Shaw's board retirement dinner was that she never thought of Shaw as her sponsor. In hindsight, she now realizes it was a tremendous moment of sponsorship. "I want you to know Roz Hudnall," Shaw said, introducing her last among her guests that evening, "because the work she and I have done around women and diversity is the work I'm most proud of." Shaw went on to talk about what she had witnessed with the high esteem others accorded her everywhere she traveled. "I want you to continue to give Roz your full support," Shaw concluded, "because the work she is doing is vital to Intel's success." That was in May 2012. In early 2013, when Roz and I spoke, she had just been promoted to vice president, one of only 140 such officers worldwide in a company of nearly 100,000. Of course, Roz hastens to point out, Jane wasn't the only one who stepped in to help her realize her leadership potential at Intel. Carleen Ellis, the firm's first female executive, had played a seminal role when Roz first arrived, making sure she won important audiences for her viewpoint. And Richard Taylor, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, had provided her with key opportunities to take on visible assignments, including putting her in charge of CEO Paul Otellini's involvement with President Obama's Council on Jobs and Competitiveness and championing her VP nomination. And finally, Otellini himself had been the executive champion for diversity. "He supported my ideas, backed me up with the senior leadership team, and ultimately was the one who appointed me vice president," Roz told me. But it was through Jane that Roz saw her career culminate in an acceptance beyond what dogged effort and sterling credentials could ever alone have earned her. Being invited to that event, being included in something that intimate, and feeling so at ease in a room of such power, it was the moment you always dream of when you know you've finally arrived, Roz relates, where you don't have to prove you belong anymore. That's what Jane's advocacy has done for her, she says. She provided me with such validation, and by doing it in front of her peers, it was a moment for me that was so personally powerful. She reflected a moment and then added, "Now is my opportunity to stay committed, to make sure that I can be in a position to do that for another deserving person in the future." Just how important protégés are to their sponsors was made clear in a conversation I had with a Fortune 100 CEO. He told me that when he does that final interview with an executive at his company who is being considered for a promotion to the C-suite, he asks the all-important question, "How many people do you have in your pocket?" What he means by this, he explained, is, "How many talented young people have you sponsored over the years? people who now hold key positions in this company, so that if I asked you to do something impossible next week that involved liaising across 7 geographies and 5 functions, you could pull it off. How many leaders out there owe you one, think you're wonderful, and would give huge priority to your project? Fundamentally, he told me, I'm not interested in anyone who doesn't have deep pockets. So have that bench strength and you will go far as you make clear you want to go. You need a destination in mind, as discussed in Part 2. Don't wait to be tapped for special projects or asked to assume a leadership role. Act like a leader, and leaders will take you under their wings. Show vision, and visionaries will invite you to do more of it. The power to work the levers rests squarely in your hands. As with Dorothy and her ruby slippers, unleashing the magic depends on first realizing that you already have what you need to get back to Kansas, or start your own company, or break through to the next big job, or fulfill your vision for social justice. With that realization, it's then only a matter of making the journey. I'm going to help you every step of the way. Turn to the map in the accompanying PDF, and let's get started. Part 2. Roadmap for Proteges. Embrace your dream and do a diagnostic. Scan the horizon for potential sponsors. Distribute your risk. Understand that it's not all about you. Come through on 2 obvious fronts. Develop and deploy your currency. Lean in and lead with a yes. 3. Embrace your dream and do a diagnostic. Do you have a vision for yourself? A clear picture of your career destination? Do you know what success, your success, will look and feel like? Executive coach Gail Blank suggests that anyone contemplating an arduous undertaking remember Walt Disney's advice to the executives planning the Magic Kingdom. Build the castle first. Back in 1971, when he was spearheading that first theme park, he understood that everyone involved in achieving his dream, from the Madison Avenue ad men selling it to the guys hacking their way through the mosquito-infested Florida swamp, needed literally to see the majesty and beauty of this vision, lest they forget what they were working toward. So the first thing to rear up out of the Orlando swamp was, in fact, Disney's castle, which, with its fluttering flags and soaring gilded turrets, was the very embodiment of the magic he intended to make. It worked wonders, lifting morale, enhancing performance. As Blank observes, nothing really big, really bold, or really beautiful was ever created in a country, in a company, in a family, or in a life without a vision. A vision so powerful that people will work miracles to bring it to life. The vision thing. Building a successful career is one tough journey. No matter who you are, no matter where you're coming from, and no matter what you bring to the undertaking, you need a vision. Not just a goal, but a dream. Not just a destination, but an inspiration. A good sense of direction and loads of drive will serve you well, but you've got to see where you're headed to set a course, and be hugely motivated by what you see in order to push forward. With a magnificent castle beckoning on the horizon, you can fend off swarms of mosquitoes and keep lifting your feet out of the muck. The vision thing, however, is where women falter. They set out with a purpose, but not a dream. They are committed and driven, yet hesitant to put their foot down on the gas and keep it there. As Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, points out in her new book, Lean In, it's as though they're driving with one foot on the brake, holding back in tiny but impactful ways from the get-go, pruning their career plans to accommodate marriage and children long before they're even in a relationship. Rather than build their castle and strive to inhabit it, they tentatively sign on to an arduous journey and hope their slog will deliver them someplace sometime. What accounts for this ambivalence, this seeming failure of vision? There are 3 things going on here. For starters, women continue to have more distractions than men. For 2 decades, they have toddlers or teenagers nipping at their heels, and no matter what their childcare arrangements, that's a significant preoccupation, as is the ticking biological clock that precedes these decades. They're also still burdened with more than their fair share on the home front. Our research shows that 56% of working women shoulder 75% of the childcare, and 60% do 75% of the chores. Taken together, the second and third shift at home mean that, at work, women simply don't have the white space or unencumbered time to do some blue sky thinking about who they want to be, what they want to do, and where they want to end up. Then there's the ongoing lack of compelling role models. Few female leaders provide an image of success women can really embrace. If they happen to be world leaders, think Condoleezza Rice, or monumentally successful businesswomen, think Oprah Winfrey, then we're obliged to dwell on what they don't have, the missing life partner, the non-existent offspring, that we're just not prepared to sacrifice ourselves. Older women in particular throw into relief the awful bargain that ambitious women must seemingly strike, the kind of glaring sacrifice men just don't have to make. If somehow a woman does win the Triple Crown, career, spouse, children, we hold against her the sacrifices we feel aren't being made but should be. Remember how Hillary Clinton was pilloried for taking command and control of the healthcare bill during her stint as First Lady? And how, at the same time, her cookie-baking prowess came under scrutiny? Implicit in the attacks was the suggestion that by driving a pivotal piece of legislation, she was shortchanging her husband and child, and indeed, the nation, as White House wife and mother. The other reality is that amazingly capable women who do make it to a career pinnacle rarely talk about the agency, impact, influence, and joy that come with their achievement. Instead, they talk about sacrifice and struggle. Looking back, I'm at fault myself. I'm sure that during the years I was coping with difficult childbearing experiences, I miscarried twins and subsequently gave birth to an extremely premature child. I failed to fully share with students and colleagues the enormous satisfaction I derived from publishing my first book or giving my first keynote address. But my voice was inconsequential. Women who have real power bear a particular responsibility to talk eloquently, openly, and frequently about the fruits of success. Consider Anne-Marie Slaughter's piece in the October 2012 issue of The Atlantic Monthly. In this poignant article, which went viral and was read by millions, she chooses to focus not on the magic of her dream job — she headed up policy planning at the U.S. State Department — but on the unexpectedly fierce tugs and pulls exerted by her teenage son back home in Princeton. With searing honesty, she walks us through just how difficult it had become to do the kind of job I wanted to do as a high government official and be the kind of parent I wanted to be at a demanding time for my children. As I read the article, I wanted her to also paint a rich and alluring portrait of how wonderful it was to have impact and agency in Washington. What did it feel like to shape foreign policy at a watershed moment in history, when American power in the world was newly projected by an African-American president and a female Secretary of State? Now that role and position might be worth sacrifice and struggle. In other words, female ambition is laced with ambivalence, because every fluttering flag women see on the horizon bespeaks of a burning castle, a success not worth attaining at the price it will extort. Younger women, fearful that too much success will scare off eligible men, scale back their castle and embark on their careers with one foot on the brake. More senior women, unwilling to uproot and relocate their families should they be selected for a regional directorship, duck below the radar of the search committee or succession planners. They're not afraid of hard work, but they most certainly fear what hard work will net them in the way of greater visibility, accountability, and time away from their families. That a top job might endow them with significant autonomy, or grant their children singular opportunities, or position them to effect sweeping change for all women, seems not to hold much sway in their calculus. They're focused strictly on the cost. This gloomy state of affairs needn't persist. Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg, Yahoo's Marissa Mayer, and U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren are already changing the conversation, showing that women can not only win the Triple Crown, but also revel in its spoils. Some of these voices, Cherie Blair, Joanna Coles, and Sally Krawcheck, for example, you'll find in this book. In the final chapter, I'll share my own castle and describe how I dreamed it and what I feel about it now that I inhabit it. That should get you thinking about a bold and beautiful vision for your own success. This is the first step in your journey. Joanna Coles. You've likely seen her on TV, on CBS playing herself as the formidable editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan, or in her mentor role on Project Runway All-Stars, judging the career prospects of aspiring fashion designers. Or maybe you caught one of her many appearances on national news programs, including Anderson Cooper 360, CBS This Morning, and MSNBC's Morning Joe. Ever since 2011, when Adweek named her Editor of the Year in recognition of the extraordinary job she'd done at Marie Claire, Joanna Coles has been seizing the national spotlight, the very embodiment of the Cosmo girl with her chic looks and cheeky professionalism. And she's clearly loving every minute. I didn't realize before I became editor-in-chief of Marie Claire how much I was going to enjoy being in charge, she says. Since September 2012, when I interviewed her, Joanna's been in charge of Cosmopolitan, the world's largest women's magazine, with 64 international editions and best-selling digital and newsstand versions. The job entails much more than overseeing content for the print magazine. There is also the website, tablet, and brand extensions, including Cosmo Radio on SiriusXM, the Cosmopolitan collection of lingerie, handbags, and shoes at JCPenney, and even a joint venture with Harlequin Books. Yet when we spoke, she wasn't the least bit stressed. On the contrary, this is the level of command she sought her entire life. I love seeing my ideas of what a magazine for women should be unfold, and watching them take shape over a number of issues. It's thrilling being the person ultimately making the decisions. She knows only too well the frustrations of being number two, the role she played at More magazine prior to taking over at Marie Claire in 2006. I would be consulted, of course, and would give my opinion. It might be the choice of cover art or the mix of features within the magazine, she explains. But in the end, it wasn't my decision, and I would often disagree. You yearn to play out your own vision. In her 6-year tenure at Marie Claire, that vision played out in extraordinary ways. For 2 years running, the magazine was nominated for Public Service Awards for its investigative journalism. One story on buried rape kits, evidence victims submitted to police that was subsequently ignored, got the magazine shortlisted for an award that ultimately was conferred on The New Yorker. Just the fact we were up there alongside a storied magazine with a huge tradition of investigative journalism made me so proud, she told me. Traditionally, women's magazines are not in this territory. Coles's vision also proved remarkably successful in terms of ad revenues, which she boosted by 31% over the course of 2011. With 181 pages of glossy, high-end advertisements from the likes of Gucci and Bulgari, the spring 2012 issue broke a record in the magazine's 17-year history. Newsstand sales rose too, despite the downward trend in print media overall and the sluggish economy. Many former journalists would find that kind of success stressful. But Coles, who used to chase down everyone from politicians to criminals to file stories for The Guardian and The Times of London, finds her high-visibility job at the helm hugely liberating. What produces stresses and strains, she told me, is not being in control of your schedule, especially if you're a parent and are tugged and pulled by responsibilities to children. She remembers with painful clarity a hellish week that began on the morning of her son's 2nd birthday. Her editor at the Times called to have her cover a breaking story about 2 professors who'd been stabbed at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. She told him she couldn't do it. He called back and told her he really needed her to do this. So she handed the birthday boy to her husband, who had just arrived home from a business trip, traveled to Dartmouth, and set about capturing the story, interviewing neighbors, hiring a photographer, and staying up until 5 a.m. to meet the deadline. And then her editor called to say that, as much as everyone loved the story, they weren't going to run it until the end of the week. That was the moment I realized these 2 lifestyles are no longer compatible, she said. Here, I'd just missed my son's 2nd birthday for a story that didn't run. I knew what my priorities were. I wanted to work and I wanted to have a family, but I needed more control, and the impetus was on me to go find it. Finding the right job wasn't easy. Coles took an editing job at New York Magazine, as it seemed to offer, with more regular hours, more control. Instead, she found herself working until 11 p.m. 3 days a week and going home to a second shift, She often was up all night with her newborn. "It was the only time I've understood what it must be like to be a drug addict," she said. "I would get up in the morning and all I could think about was when I could get more sleep, how I could get more sleep. I have to get more sleep. If someone could have given me an intravenous drip of sleep, I would have taken it. I was desperate. Those 3 years were really tough." But she powered through, sustained by her belief that she would eventually run the show. When she got the job heading up Marie Claire, she at last had the control over her schedule and over the strategic vision of the magazine she had sought throughout her career. "I suppose this boils down to power," she commented, "but that's not how I thought about it at the time. I saw it as the ability to drive the right decisions in areas of life that I cared about most." In addition to her role at Cosmopolitan, Coles derives enormous joy and satisfaction in being at the red-hot center of the fashion world. For 2 seasons prior to taking over the magazine, she starred in Project Runway All-Stars, the spin-off of Project Runway that she helped create with Marie Claire fashion director Nina Garcia. Fashion allows her, she says, a unique perk: to be celebratory about the place she's in and the living she earns. She laments that women cannot talk about money without seeming braggy and unlikable. "It's increasingly important to earn your own money," she observes. "It buys you freedom from a miserable relationship. It buys you freedom from bosses you're no longer in sync with. Being on edge financially is very stressful. It undermines your energy." She adds, "These are things we women don't talk about enough." Dare to dream. So you're going to dream, and you're going to dream big. You're going to embrace your God-given right to power, influence, agency, and impact. You're going to own your ambition, and you're going to design a castle for it, right here and now. Because without a clear sense of your destination, there's no point in getting yourself a sponsor. Sponsors are the dream enablers. To get started with this dream work, consider the following questions. What place would feel magical? What kind of room or space do you want to inhabit? What is the view when you look out the window? Whom do you want to meet with? Who intrigues you or excites you? What sort of conversation do you wish you could have with them? What transformation do you most want to drive? What sort of large-scale change do you wish you could be part of? These are challenging questions, which is why women put them off. But if you give yourself permission to contemplate any and all answers, if you don't burden the process by trying to be realistic or pragmatic, if you forget the should and don't think about the cans, this exercise can be incredibly liberating and inspiring. If it's not, or you're having trouble silencing that ever-rational left brain, turn to the epilogue. You might well benefit, too, from consulting the vast tranche of motivational literature, including Gail Blank's book, Throw Out 50 Things, Clear the Clutter, Find Your Life. Just commit to building a castle, if not the castle. Understand you are not going to make any more excuses or tolerate any more postponements. No matter how old you are, you simply don't have time. None of us do. There will be plenty of detours and side railings without you furnishing your own at the very start. Do a diagnostic. Now you can get pragmatic. With those turrets and flags fluttering on the horizon, you can determine what you've got in your kit that will help you attain your dream. Assess what you have, what you've done, what you've proven you can do, what you're ready to do again. Resist the temptation to catalog skills you don't have, or feel you should have by now, or are afraid you'll never have. Catalog only your strengths. It's essential you answer the following questions. What do you do exceptionally well? In what skill sets do you have your black belt? What is your currency? What sets you apart? What experiences distinguish you? What inherent or acquired differences lend you a distinctive brand or value added that others may not bring to the table? What accomplishment has given you joy and won you accolades? What gives you satisfaction so you want to do more of it? How does the mission or mandate of your organization overlap with your own values or goals? This is heavy lifting, but you needn't do it alone. This work is ideal to take up with a mentor. Mentors have the time and the inclination to help you with your self-assessment as well as your blue sky thinking. A selfless desire to help you with your future is what makes them mentors. They can see and put into words what you may not see about yourself or be able to articulate. You might also consult online assessment tools and any performance reviews that have been done on you at work. If you've not been evaluated, now's the time to make that request. Classes, seminars, or lectures are other good opportunities to hold a mirror to yourself or discover what you didn't know about your abilities. Remember, the inventory you want to take is strictly positive. Cherie Blair. To most Americans, Cherie Blair is a famous wife, the spouse of ex-Prime Minister Tony Blair and mother of his 4 children. In fact, there is another Cherie, Cherie Booth QC, as she is known professionally, a barrister who has achieved one of the highest honors of the legal profession as a member of the Queen's Counsel. It was Cherie, and not Tony, who first attained a coveted pupillage in the chambers of Derry Irvine, advisor to the Labour Party and Lord Chancellor for the first 6 years of Tony Blair's tenure as Prime Minister. Many suppose that Cherie, a blazing star in the legal profession, would enter public office ahead of Tony. "I was always interested in politics," she explains, "but I learned fairly early on that my skills as an advocate and my imagination as a lawyer were better used to achieve social change." Booth knew firsthand the difficulties women faced if they were not allied with men. Raised by her mother and paternal grandmother, her father abandoned the family when she was a baby, and her grandfather died when she was 14. Booth excelled at school, earning a first-class degree at the London School of Economics and winning the prize for top student. She was top of her class on the bar exams as well. When she went to get a job as a lawyer, however, she found that being a wife and mother were the only identities others perceived. "Suddenly, I learned the reality of the world in the 1970s, that women still should know their place," she comments. "The assumption was that backing a woman wasn't a good idea because obviously she would leave." Booth did not leave. Through the births of 3 of her children, she committed herself to challenging cases in employment and discrimination law, a brand new field in which she was ideally credentialed. The cases she took on, arguing on behalf of a Muslim schoolgirl who wanted to wear a hijab to school, on behalf of a lesbian who sued Southwest Trains for denying concessions to her partner, and seeking damages for a girl whose school failed to diagnose her dyslexia, established her as a formidable voice in social justice and a viable contender for the Queen's Counsel. Soon after the birth of her 3rd child in 1988, Booth decided to move chambers, the UK equivalent of changing law firms, in order to position herself for her QC bid, approaching one of the firms who'd turned her down when she was seeking her first position as a barrister. "Quite a hard thing, a masculine thing for me to do," she notes. In addition to her caseload, Booth was involved in the Bar's Council, chaired the Bar's IT committee, and was mounting a bid for Queen Counsel, all while her husband was campaigning to lead the Labour Party. The day she heard she'd been appointed QC turned out to be, coincidentally, the very day she and her husband were invited to dine with the Queen. "It's quite rare for a QC to be able actually to thank the Queen personally for being appointed," Booth notes. "It was a fantastic moment. I felt I had achieved something truly significant by dint of my own efforts and abilities." She was the 76th woman in Britain's history to take silk, a reference to the gown that QC barristers wear in court. At 41 years old, she was by far the youngest. Booth has acquired many accolades since then. Today, she's recognized globally for her ongoing human rights advocacy, particularly on behalf of women. Indeed, her work spearheading the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, which has improved the earning power and life prospects of 20,000 women worldwide, won her a CBE in the January 2013 honors list. "Having financial independence has given me a voice. Other women should be able to have that voice too," she says. "It's fantastic to think I have done something to help them." But to this day, she regards the QC ceremony as her crowning achievement. The photos capture some of the pomp, the long, full-bodied wig, the elaborate lace ruffle, the pair of breeches she had specially made in lieu of the skirt her predecessors had been made to wear. Nor will she ever forget piling into a Rolls-Royce with her children, being driven to Westminster Hall in Parliament, and being greeted by the clerk in his gloves and morning suit. "It's a very old ritual," she explains. The Lord Chancellor makes a speech about the importance of the legal system, and one by one, all the new silks take an oath of allegiance to the Queen. After that, you're called to the Lord Chief Justice's court, the highest judge in the land, where you move to the outer bar. In my year, it was a particularly big event, not because of me, though there was a lot of press because I was the leader of the opposition's wife, but because 6 women were appointed, the most ever. With her sister and mother in attendance, Booth was especially conscious of the 3 generations of dreams she carried that day. What was going through my head was how proud my mum was and how proud my grandmother would have been, she recalls. From a very early age, my grandmother had been a huge fan of Rose Hilbron, the first female silk, because Hilbron was, like her, from Liverpool. My grandmother used to go and watch her plead in court. I don't think that in all those years, when she was such a big fan of roses, that she ever thought her granddaughter would become Hilbron's successor. That day at Westminster gave me a huge sense of accomplishment and gratitude. It was a pretty big thing for a working-class girl from Liverpool to have done. Assess your organization. Having a confident handle on what you bring to the mission is half the diagnostic. The other half is assessing the context in which you'll be leveraging those strengths. You must map the organizational landscape. Consider the following questions. Is your firm flat, few titles, no apparent ladder, or hierarchical? If there is a ladder, how is it constructed? What do titles mean in terms of what you do, where you do it, and whom you manage? Where are you on the ladder? If your organization is flat and titles mean nothing, how do you then navigate the organization? What deliverables will get you promoted? As I discovered as a young professor, being Teacher of the Year was certainly an indication of high performance, but it did not win me tenure. Nor did publishing a high-impact trade book. Publication in obscure but highly regarded peer-reviewed journals was the deliverable I should have focused on. What are the notch points, the sticky places, the plateaus, dips, or pitfalls you need to power through? Every company, every profession, every worthwhile journey has these shoals, and many capable employees have foundered on them. Identify them now so that when you do win a sponsor, you know where to focus his or her efforts. Again, for help with this homework, turn to mentors. A well-chosen mentor will know the lay of the land in your firm. More importantly, he or she has successfully navigated it. Mentors can help you understand the unwritten rules, provide a map for the uncharted corridors to power, and reveal the business behind the business. They are typically not positioned to make your dream happen, nor do they owe you that kind of leg up. But in assisting you with this essential assessment, they prepare you to attract sponsors. Nail the tactics. Look for role models. Read about people like Coles and Booth, whose achievements inspire you. Keep refreshing your pool. It's important you have a robust sampling, lest the daily cavalcade of stories about unrewarded struggle or unwarranted sacrifice succeed in dampening your drive. Amazing people triumph, often overcoming hurdles far greater than your own. Put them in your sights. Envisage yourself at age 50 with 25 productive years ahead of you. It's never too late to focus on a goal and go after it. Consult with a mentor, role model, or personal development coach who can help you see the big picture. Brainstorm a professional target list. Write down your aspirations, however modest or fabulous, and figure out how to hold yourself accountable. If you've ever had your performance assessed using an industry diagnostic, a Hogan personality inventory, or a 360-degree review, for example, ask for the results and review them with your manager and/or mentor to zero in on your strengths. If you haven't had a performance review, informal or formal, ask for one. No matter what size company you work for, somebody's taking your measure. Don't miss out on the opportunity to benefit from their perspective.